I never thought a single piece of paper could destroy everything I'd worked for. But there it was, sitting innocently on my desk between Teresa Martinez's book report and Danny Chen's math homework. A plain white envelope with my name written in perfect cursive. My name is Harper, and until that Monday morning in October, I was living what I considered a pretty good life. I'd spent the last 5 years teaching 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary, had finally paid off my student loans, and was 3 months into living with Lucas, the kind of guy who brings you coffee in bed and never complains about doing the dishes. The first warning bell hadn't rung yet, and my classroom still had that early morning emptiness that usually felt peaceful. Not today. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope, the paper inside crisp and expensive feeling. Dear Miss Sullivan, your inappropriate relationship with a married parent from last year's class has been noted. Resign quietly, or the school board will receive evidence of your misconduct. You have until Friday to make your decision. I read it 3 times, my stomach dropping further with each pass. The accusation was completely false. I'd never had any kind of relationship with a parent, married or otherwise. But my mind raced through every interaction I'd had with parents over the past year, searching for anything that could be twisted into something sinister. Harper, you okay? I jumped, quickly stuffing the letter into my desk drawer. Sarah Chen, Danny's mom and our PTA president, stood in my doorway with a concerned look on her face. Oh, good morning, Sarah. Just lost in thought. I forced a smile, hoping she couldn't see how badly my hands were shaking. Thanks again for organizing the fall festival. The kids are so excited. Of course. Though I can't take all the credit. Evelyn Prescott's connections really helped secure the donations this year. Sarah beamed. She's quite something, isn't she? Such an influential woman in our community. I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral at the mention of Lucas's mother. I still hadn't met her despite dating her son for over a year. Lucas always had some reason why the timing wasn't right. The first students started trickling in, filling the room with their usual morning chatter. I went through the motions of greeting them, checking homework, and starting our daily routine. But my mind kept drifting to that letter, tucked away in my desk like a ticking bomb. During lunch, I called Lucas. Hey, beautiful, what's up? His voice was warm, familiar. I need to talk to you about something. It's important. I lowered my voice, though the teacher's lounge was empty. Someone left a threatening letter on my desk this morning. The line went quiet for a moment. What kind of threat? I explained about the letter, the accusation, the deadline. With each word, the silence on his end grew heavier. I'll come over tonight, he finally said. We'll figure this out together, okay? But something in his voice made me uneasy. Like he wasn't entirely surprised. That afternoon, as I was packing up to leave, I noticed another envelope on my desk. My heart nearly stopped, but this one was different. A cream-colored invitation to the annual Prescott Family Foundation Charity Gala. The note attached read, Dear Miss Sullivan, your presence is requested this Saturday evening. We look forward to finally meeting our sons. Companion. Regards, Evelyn Prescott. Perfect cursive matched the threatening letter exactly. I sat there, staring at both pieces of paper as the pieces started falling into place. Lucas had always said his mother was protective, traditional, concerned about the family's reputation. But this was something else entirely. I pulled out my phone to call him again, but stopped. Instead, I took photos of both the letter and the invitation, my hands steady now. If Evelyn Prescott wanted to play games, she'd learn I wasn't the easy target she thought I was. Lucas arrived at my apartment that evening with takeout from our favorite Thai place, but I couldn't eat. I kept thinking about those 2 letters sitting in my bag, their matching handwriting like a signature on my death warrant. You're sure it's your mother's handwriting? I asked, pushing my pad thai around the container. Lucas ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd noticed early in our relationship. I can't be certain, but... He trailed off, avoiding my eyes. Look, my mother can be... intense about certain things, but threatening your career? That doesn't sound like her. I pulled out both letters, laying them side by side on the coffee table. Really? 'Cause these look pretty identical to me. And suddenly she wants to meet me after a year of convenient excuses? Harper, please. His voice had that pleading tone that usually melted my resolve. Not tonight. The gala could be a good thing. A chance to clear the air. Clear the air? Lucas, someone is threatening my job. My entire career could be ruined, and you're acting like this is just some minor family drama. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw my mother standing there with her signature worried expression. I called her, Lucas admitted quietly. I thought, maybe we could use some perspective. My mother swept in, bringing with her the familiar scent of library books and lavender hand cream. One look at my face and she pulled me into a hug. Oh, sweetie, she said, then turned to Lucas. Would you mind giving us a moment? He nodded, grabbing his keys. I'll go pick up some coffee. We could all use some. Once he was gone, my mother picked up the letters, examining them with the same careful attention she gave to rare books at her library. Well, she said finally, someone certainly wants to get your attention. But threatening letters rarely come with formal party invitations. Mom, this isn't funny. No, it's not. But it is revealing. She sat down, patting the spot next to her. Tell me about Lucas's mother. What do you know about her? I realized, sitting there, how little I actually knew. She's some kind of socialite. Runs a family foundation. Lucas doesn't talk about her much. And in a year of dating, she's never made an effort to meet you? My mother's tone was gentle, but I heard the concern underneath. That's quite a statement in itself, don't you think? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. Why didn't you tell me Lucas was a Prescott? Like Prescott Foundation Prescotts? Just saw the gala guest list at work. Girl, we need to talk. My stomach dropped. I showed the text to my mother, whose eyebrows shot up. The Prescotts. She let out a low whistle. Honey, that family practically built this city. Their foundation funds half the hospitals in the state, including the one where Jenna works. The door opened and Lucas returned, carrying 3 coffee cups. He froze when he saw our expressions. When were you going to tell me? I asked quietly. Tell you what? That you're not just some regular software developer. That you're part of the Prescott family. He set the coffee down carefully, like he was buying time. It's not. I didn't want it to change things between us. You're so real, so genuine. Everyone else I've dated only saw the family name. So you just decided to hide a huge part of your life from me? For a year. My voice cracked. And now your mother is threatening my career because, what, I'm not good enough for a Prescott? Harper, that's not. My mother stood up, gathering her purse. I think you two have some talking to do. Harper, call me tomorrow. She hugged me, whispering, remember, people who play games usually have something to lose. After she left, Lucas and I sat in silence. Finally, he spoke. I'll talk to my mother. Clear this up. Just come to the gala. Give her a chance to know you. I looked at him, this man I thought I knew completely, and wondered what else he wasn't telling me. Fine, I said. But I want the truth, Lucas. All of it. No more secrets. He nodded, but something in his expression made me wonder if I was walking straight into Evelyn Prescott's trap. Prescott Mansion loomed before me like something out of a Gothic novel, complete with wrought iron gates and perfectly manicured hedges. I smoothed down my dress, the nicest one I owned, but probably worth less than one of their doorknobs, and tried to ignore the trembling in my hands. Ready! Lucas squeezed my hand, but I noticed he was sweating too. Before I could answer, the massive front door swung open. A tall woman with steel gray hair and perfect posture stood there. wearing what looked like casual evening wear but probably cost more than my yearly salary. Lucas, darling. Evelyn Prescott's voice was honey smooth, but her eyes were arctic when they landed on me. And this must be your teacher friend. The way she said teacher made it sound like a communicable disease. Mother, this is Harper Sullivan. Harper, my mother, Evelyn Prescott. I extended my hand. It's lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Prescott. She ignored my hand, turning back into the house. Do come in. Henry's waiting in the study. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from old money, antiques, oil paintings, and the subtle smell of lemon polish. But something felt off, staged almost like we were walking onto a set rather than into a home. Lucas's father turned out to be surprisingly warm, greeting me with a genuine smile and firm handshake. Harper, we've heard so much about you. Though not nearly enough, I'd say. He shot a pointed look at his wife. Well, Evelyn said, settling into an armchair like it was a throne, perhaps Miss Sullivan could tell us more about herself. Your background, for instance. I felt Lucas tense beside me. Mother. It's fine, I cut in, meeting her gaze. I grew up here in the city. My mother's a librarian. My father passed when I was young. I put myself through college and have been teaching at Riverside Elementary for 5 years now. How admirable. Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I understand there have been some concerns at the school recently. My blood ran cold. Lucas stood up abruptly. I need a drink. Harper. White wine, please, I managed, though my throat felt desert dry. Henry, help him with the drinks? Evelyn's tone made it clear it wasn't a request. Once we were alone, she leaned forward. Let's be direct, shall we? Lucas has a bright future ahead of him. Prescott Foundation is expanding internationally, and he'll be taking a leading role. He needs someone suitable, and a teacher isn't suitable? Oh dear. She laughed softly. You seem intelligent enough. Surely you understand that Lucas was merely experimenting with a simpler life, playing at being ordinary. But he belongs in our world. The world of threatening letters and blackmail? Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, though it would be unfortunate if certain allegations about your professional conduct were to surface. Before I could respond, Lucas returned with the drinks. But he wasn't alone. A stunning woman about my age followed him in, moving with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to shop clearance racks. Victoria. Evelyn's entire demeanor transformed. What a lovely surprise. I hope you don't mind me dropping by, Victoria said, her smile dazzling. When I heard Lucas was home for dinner. Of course not, darling. You're practically family. Evelyn's emphasis on family felt like a slap. Victoria and Lucas practically grew up together. They were even engaged briefly, weren't you, dears? I watched Lucas's face carefully. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Ancient history, Victoria laughed, but her gaze lingered on Lucas. Though some things are worth revisiting, wouldn't you say? The room suddenly felt airless. I stood up, my untouched wine glass trembling slightly. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. Down the hall, second door on the right, Evelyn directed, her voice dripping with false concern. Though if you're feeling unwell, we'd completely understand if you needed to leave early. As I walked away, I heard Victoria's musical laugh mixing with Evelyn's satisfied chuckle. But it was Lucas's silence that hurt the most. In the bathroom, I gripped the marble countertop and stared at my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked scared, out of place, exactly how Evelyn wanted me to feel. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone and texted Jenna. Need everything you can find on Victoria and the Prescotts. Time to fight fire with fire. Jenna's research arrived in a flood of texts at 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep anyway, lying there in Lucas's empty bed. He was working late again, the third time this week since the dinner disaster. "Girl, you won't believe this," Jenna's final message read. "Victoria Chong isn't just Lucas's ex. She's on the Prescott Foundation board now. And guess who just approved a $50 million donation to rebuild the pediatric wing at my hospital?" I stared at my phone until the screen went dark, then got up and started packing. By sunrise, I'd filled 3 boxes with my things from Lucas's apartment. My classroom felt like the only safe space left, until Sarah Chen appeared in my doorway during lunch break. "Harper, do you have a minute?" Her usual warmth was replaced with something careful, measured. "The board is calling an emergency meeting this afternoon. They've received some concerning information." My stomach dropped. "About me?" She nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. "They're saying there are photos from last year's field trip with Jason Miller's father." Jason Miller, the quiet kid whose parents went through a brutal divorce. His father had hugged me, crying, after I helped Jason through a panic attack during the museum trip. "That's ridiculous," I said. "There were dozens of parent chaperones that day." "I know, but..." Sarah hesitated. "The foundation is our biggest donor. Mrs. Prescott has considerable influence." Of course she did. I was gathering my things to leave when Henry Prescott appeared in my classroom. He looked older than he had at dinner, tired around the eyes. "Miss Sullivan, may I?" He gestured to one of the tiny student chairs. I nodded, watching him fold his tall frame into the chair with surprising grace. "My wife," he said carefully, "is very protective of our family's reputation. Sometimes destructively so." "Is that why you're here? To protect the family reputation?" He smiled sadly. "No. I'm here because 30 years ago I made the mistake of letting Evelyn drive away someone I cared about. Someone who wasn't suitable. I've regretted it every day since." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. "Where are you? Why are your things packed?" He doesn't know what his mother is doing, does he? I asked Henry. Lucas sees the best in people, especially his mother. Henry stood up, wincing slightly. But he's not blind, just afraid of losing his family. The question is, are you afraid of losing yours? He placed a business card on my desk. "My private number. When you're ready to fight back, call me." That evening, I found Lucas waiting at my apartment. "You're moving out?" Without talking to me. His voice cracked. "Harper, whatever's wrong, we can fix it." "Can we?" "Because your mother is trying to destroy my career, and you're too busy having drinks with Victoria to notice." "That's not, wait, how do you know about your lunch meetings? The foundation dinner last week?" "Jenna works at the hospital, Lucas. People talk." He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. "It's not what you think. Victoria's helping me with a project. The pediatric wing." "I know." I felt strangely calm now. "The same week your mother threatens my job, you're secretly meeting with your ex to arrange a multi-million-dollar donation. Quite a coincidence." "Harper, please." "The board meeting today? They're reviewing photos your mother somehow got, trying to paint me as someone who preys on vulnerable parents." My voice finally broke. "And where were you? Having another business lunch with Victoria?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "I love you," he finally said. "But you don't understand the pressure, the expectations." "You're right. I don't understand choosing family reputation over doing what's right." I pulled out Henry's card. "But I understand fighting back." Lucas's eyes widened. "My father gave you that?" "Harper, whatever you're thinking." "Get out, Lucas." I opened the door. "And tell your mother she picked the wrong teacher to bully." After he left, I called Henry's number. It was time to learn how the other half really lived, and how they could fall. Henry's information led me to the annual Prescott Foundation Gala, though not as a guest. I was working it, serving champagne to the city's elite while gathering intel. Jenna had pulled strings through her hospital connections to get me in, disguised as catering staff. Mrs. Prescott likes her martinis extra dry, Victoria's voice carried across the ballroom. She stood with Evelyn, both of them glittering in designer gowns. Just like her sense of humor. Their laughter felt like needles under my skin. I adjusted my black uniform and kept moving, Henry's words echoing in my head. Watch, listen, and wait for the right moment. Lucas arrived late, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. The sight of him still made my heart skip, even after everything. He scanned the room, and for a moment our eyes met. I turned away quickly, but not before seeing the flash of recognition cross his face. Harper! He started moving toward me, but Victoria intercepted him. Dance with me, she purred, leading him to the floor. Your mother's been asking about the ring. The champagne flute in my hand cracked. I set the tray down, ducking into a service corridor to check my bleeding palm. Quite a grip you've got there. I spun around. Henry stood in the shadows, holding out a handkerchief. I shouldn't be here, I whispered, wrapping my hand. This was a mistake. On the contrary, in about 10 minutes, Evelyn will make her annual speech. And this year, she's in for quite a surprise. Before I could ask what he meant, screams erupted from the ballroom. We rushed back to find Evelyn sprawled on the marble floor, Victoria kneeling beside her. She just collapsed. Victoria's voice carried across the stunned crowd. Lucas, call an ambulance. I started to retreat, but Henry gripped my arm. Wait. Evelyn stirred, her voice weak but carrying in the silent room. Victoria. The papers. My purse. Victoria grabbed Evelyn's clutch, but as she opened it, papers spilled across the floor. I recognized them immediately. The threatening letter, the doctored photos, but also something else. Bank statements. Transfer records. Lucas picked up one of the papers, his face darkening. Mother, what is this? Why are you transferring foundation money to a private account? It's not what you think, Victoria jumped in. We were restructuring the pediatric wing funding. Through your personal account? Henry's voice boomed across the room. Interesting approach to philanthropy. Crowd began to murmur. I watched Evelyn's face as she realized what was happening. Her collapse had scattered the evidence of her schemes for everyone to see. You, she hissed, looking at Henry. You planned this. No, my dear. You did. Every scheme, every manipulation, every attempt to control our son's life. I just made sure the truth came out. Lucas was still reading through the papers, his hands shaking. The threatening letters to Harper, the false accusations. You were behind all of it. I was protecting you. Evelyn struggled to her feet, shrugging off Victoria's help. That girl would have ruined everything we built. The only thing ruined, Henry said quietly, is your credibility. The board members here tonight have seen enough, I think. I started backing away again, but Lucas caught sight of me. Harper, wait. He moved toward me, but stopped short when Victoria grabbed his arm. Lucas, please, Victoria pleaded. Everything I did for us. There is no us, he snapped, pulling away. There never was. But I was already running, pushing through the service entrance into the cool night air. Behind me, I could hear Lucas calling my name, Evelyn's angry shouts, the growing chaos of the gala falling apart. My phone buzzed, a text from Henry, Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2. I stared at the message, my bleeding hand throbbing in time with my racing heart. Evelyn was exposed, but not destroyed. Victoria was desperate, which made her dangerous. And Lucas? Another text came through, this time from Lucas. I know the truth now. Please let me explain. I deleted both messages without responding. Revenge, I was learning, was like a champagne glass, crystal clear until it shattered, leaving everyone bleeding. The question was, how much more blood would be spilled before this was over? The morning sickness hit just as I was reviewing Henry's latest message about phase 2 of our plan. Funny how life has its own timing. I barely made it to the bathroom before losing my breakfast, my phone clattering to the floor. 3 pregnancy tests later, I sat on my bathroom floor, staring at identical pink lines that were about to complicate everything. My phone buzzed again. "Lucas, we need to talk. Please." Before I could respond, another message came through, from Victoria this time. "Meeting at Riverside Park. 2 p.m. Come alone or the school board gets an anonymous tip about your condition." My hand instinctively went to my stomach. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Jenna. How did Victoria know? Park was deserted except for a few joggers. Victoria sat on a bench overlooking the river, looking perfectly put together despite the scandal at the gala. "Evelyn's in the hospital," she said without looking at me. "Stress-induced breakdown, they're saying. The foundation board is launching an investigation." I didn't come here to discuss Evelyn. No. She finally turned to me, her smile sharp. Not even to discuss how she'll react when she learns she's going to be a grandmother? Though I suppose that depends on who the father really is. My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Jason Miller's father. The one from those photos? You two seemed close." She pulled out her phone, showing me a series of pictures. Me hugging Mark Miller during the field trip, both of us crying. Without context, it looked intimate, damning. "Those pictures are from months ago. He was thanking me for helping his son. Details don't matter. What matters is the timing." She zoomed in on the date stamp. "About 12 weeks ago, wasn't it? Around when you and Lucas were taking a break?" The nausea returned, stronger this time. "You're insane." "Maybe. But I'm also very good at math. And very good at making people believe what I want them to believe." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave town. Start fresh somewhere else. I'll make sure you get a good recommendation for a teaching position far away. And if I don't, then these photos go public, along with some very convincing evidence about when exactly you started showing. Lucas will never know for sure if the baby is his. Neither will anyone else." My phone buzzed again. "Henry, don't do anything rash. We're close to." Victoria snatched my phone, reading the message before I could stop her. Her laugh was cold. "Still plotting with Henry? Poor Harper. You really think he cares about you? He's just using you to get back at Evelyn, just like she used me." She threw my phone into the river before I could react. "You have 48 hours to decide. After that, everything goes public." She started walking away, then paused. "Oh, and Harper? Lucas proposed to me last night. He thinks it's best for everyone if we stick to our original plan. The plan his mother and I made years ago." I watched her leave, my mind spinning. Without my phone, I couldn't contact Henry or verify her claim about Lucas. Pregnancy tests felt like they were burning a hole in my pocket. Walking home, I passed the elementary school. Sarah Chen was outside, speaking with what looked like board members. They stopped talking when they saw me, their expressions grim. At my apartment, Lucas was waiting by the door. "Harper, thank God. I've been trying to reach you." I pushed past him into my apartment, but he followed. "My mother's in the hospital. Victoria says you threatened her at the gala, that you and my father planned everything. And you believe her?" My voice cracked. He ran his hands through his hair, looking lost. "I don't know what to believe anymore. But Victoria showed me the photos. From the field trip. Why didn't you tell me about Mark Miller?" I stood there, one hand unconsciously protecting my stomach, watching the man I loved choose to believe the worst about me. "Get out," I whispered. "Harper, get out." After he left, I sat in the dark, surrounded by the ruins of my life. My career, my relationship, my reputation, all destroyed. And now, a baby whose paternity would always be questioned. Victoria had one. Or maybe Evelyn had. In the end, did it matter which Prescott woman destroyed me? I wasn't planning to go to the hospital. But when Henry texted from my mother's borrowed phone about Evelyn demanding a DNA test, something in me snapped. 3 days of hiding in my apartment, throwing up and crying, had left me raw and reckless. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and lies. Victoria stood outside Evelyn's private room, blocking my path. "You're not welcome here," she hissed. "Actually, she is." Henry emerged from the room. The DNA test results just arrived. Victoria's perfect composure cracked. "That's impossible," the lab said. "I had them rush it." Henry's smile was cold. Along with another test I requested, one comparing Lucas's DNA to mine. The hallway went silent. Lucas appeared behind Victoria, holding a manila envelope. "Open it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He did, his hands shaking slightly. I watched his face as he read, saw the moment everything he thought he knew crumbled. "This can't be right," he whispered. "What does it say?" Victoria demanded. "The baby is mine." Lucas looked up at me, then at Henry. "But according to this, you're not my father." A harsh laugh came from inside the room. Evelyn stood in the doorway, still elegant despite her hospital gown. "Of course he's not." Her voice was bitter. "Henry's known for years. Haven't you, dear? Known that your precious son belongs to Charles Winston." Victoria went pale. "Charles Winston? My father?" And suddenly everything clicked into place. Victoria wasn't just Evelyn's ally, she was Lucas's half-sister. "That's why you've been so desperate to keep us apart," I said to Victoria. "You knew the truth would come out if anyone looked too closely at the family genetics." "I was protecting our family." Victoria's composure shattered completely. "Mother promised if I helped her, no one would ever know." "Know what?" Lucas cut in. "That you're my sister? That everything, the photos, the threats, the lies about Harper, was to keep this secret?" "To protect you," Evelyn insisted. Victoria understood what was at stake. "Our reputation, our standing." "Your lies," Henry corrected. "I kept your secret for years, Evelyn, because I loved Lucas as my own. But watching you destroy an innocent woman's life to protect your precious reputation? That's when I knew it had to end." I stepped closer to Evelyn's bed. "You were so worried about your family's reputation being ruined by a teacher. But you ruined it yourself years ago. You understand nothing." Evelyn tried to sit up, her monitor beeping frantically. "Everything I did was for this family." "No," Lucas said quietly. "Everything you did was for yourself." He turned to Victoria. "You're my sister. All this time, you knew and still helped her try to destroy Harper?" Victoria flinched. "Lucas, please. Get out." His voice was ice. "Both of you. I never want to see either of you again." Evelyn made a choked sound. "Lucas," he said, "get out." I surprised myself by taking Lucas's hand. He squeezed back. After they left, Henry handed me another envelope. "The board members received copies this morning. Every scheme, every manipulation documented. Your reputation is cleared, Harper. The school board is meeting tomorrow to formally apologize." Lucas turned to me, his eyes full of pain and hope. "Harper, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you, should have seen through their lies. The baby, our baby, isn't going to fix this," I finished. "Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired." "I know." He swallowed hard. "But I want to try. If you'll let me." I looked at Henry, who nodded slightly. "Sometimes," he said, "the truth hurts before it heals." Outside the hospital, the sun was setting. I touched my stomach, thinking about the tiny life growing there, free now from Victoria's threats and Evelyn's lies. But as Lucas held the car door open for me, I wondered if knowing the truth was really the same as finding peace. Some wounds, like some secrets, take longer to heal than others. 6 months later, I stood in my classroom watching my students file out for winter break. My expanding belly made it harder to reach the top of the whiteboard now, but the kids found it endlessly fascinating, especially when the baby kicked during story time. The last parent left, and I noticed an envelope on my desk. For a moment, my heart stopped, but this one was different, cream-colored with a hospital logo. "Thought you might want to see this," Henry said from the doorway. He'd been stopping by regularly, checking on me in his quiet way. "Evelyn's doctors say the treatment is working. The personality disorder diagnosis explains a lot, though it doesn't excuse anything." I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Evelyn's handwriting, different now, shakier, more human. "You don't have to read it," Henry added quickly. "I know. But I did anyway." The letter wasn't an apology exactly. Evelyn wrote about control, about fear, about watching her perfect world crumble decades ago when Charles Winston ended their affair. How she'd shaped Victoria into her image, weaponizing her own daughter's pain. How seeing Lucas happy with me had triggered all her old fears of losing control. "She's asking to meet," I said finally. "To talk about the baby." Henry nodded. "Lucas knows. He's leaving the decision to you." Lucas and I were trying. Slowly, carefully, rebuilding trust through therapy sessions and honest conversations. He'd moved into a small apartment nearby, close enough to be involved with the pregnancy, far enough to give me the space I needed. Victoria had left town after the truth came out, but she'd sent one message through Henry. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt my brother." She was in therapy too, I heard, working through what it meant to be both victim and perpetrator in her mother's games. "Miss Sullivan?" Sarah Chen appeared in my doorway, holding a gift bag. "The PDA wanted you to have this for the baby." Inside was a beautiful hand-knitted blanket. Card was signed by all the parents, including Mark Miller, whose son Jason had finally started smiling again in class. "We never doubted you," Sarah said softly. "Not really." That evening, I met Lucas at our favorite Thai place. He looked tired but hopeful, the way he always did these days. "I got Mom's letter too," he said after we ordered. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about cycles," I replied. How hurt people. How secrets poison families across generations. He reached for my hand across the table. And I don't want that for our son." I placed his hand on my belly where the baby was kicking. "But I don't want him growing up without knowing his family either, the good and the bad parts. The whole messy truth." "So you'll meet with her?" "Yes, but not alone." I squeezed his hand. "We do this together or not at all." Later that night, I found another envelope in my coat pocket, this one from my mother. Inside was an old photo of her holding me as a baby and a simple note: "Love protects, but fear controls. Choose love always." I pinned the photo next to my ultrasound picture, studying the two images. In both, there was fear, hope, love, possibility. The cycle of family, breaking and healing, breaking and healing. My phone buzzed with a text from Henry. "Evelyn's doctors cleared her for visitors next week." Still sure about this? I looked at the ultrasound again, at this tiny person who would inherit all our stories, all our scars, all our hopes for something better. "Yes," I texted back. "It's time to break the cycle." Because that's the thing about family secrets, they don't die in the light. They transform. Sometimes into understanding, sometimes into forgiveness, sometimes into wisdom that helps the next generation choose a different path. I touched my belly, feeling my son move. "We'll do better," I whispered. "Not perfect, but better." And in the end, maybe that's all any family can hope for. The chance to learn from the past without being trapped by it, to love despite the scars. To choose truth over comfort, healing over hiding. To begin again, eyes wide open, hearts cautiously hopeful, ready to write a new story.